Welcome everybody to our edition of the Health Equity Coalition's webinar series today. Myself and my colleague Dana will be with the Rocky Mountain Public Health Training Center. So if you have any issues, feel free to message us in the chat. And I will turn it over to my colleagues Sarah and Robert, who are today.
Yeah, Robert, you want to go ahead and start?
I'm sharing my email right now with you, so that doesn't actually help anybody. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Robert Franklin. I serve as the CPHA officer, not the technology officer, clearly. What I wanted to share with you is this slide. And Equity Coalition. So this webinar is brought to you by the Health Equity Coalition through the work group of professional development. And so Sarah is one of our leaders there. And so we're so excited to have Stephanie deliver the content today. I'm actually really excited to see Stephanie. I haven't been able to see her like deliver. Opportunity comes because we as a Health Equity Coalition understand that to deliver a public health practice that is focused on equity, racial equity, health equity, gender equity, we need to be able to share resources and understandings and learnings with one another that is not filtered through some of our public health organizations. And so this is an opportunity for that. I'm hopeful that you'll continue to join us as we continue to have these opportunities. You also see that we have senior director and associate director leadership. Bell has assumed the senior director position, and then we have Lorena Dawson as associate director, and both of them bring very different perspectives and impassioned about the work that we're doing, specifically about bringing health equity to the public health practice and how we as an association become a anti-racial work groups that we have are infrastructure and community engagement. So if that's something that you're interested in more of and you're not really sure how to get connected, send us an email at HEC membership, that's the Health Equity Coalition membership at gmail.com. We're working on another date, another meeting in November. We certainly have one scheduled for December 1st at 5 p.m. And survey we'll bring up at the end. So without further ado, Sarah, I'll turn it back to you to introduce the content today.
Thank you so much, Robert. It really takes a team to pull these. So I'm just yet another volunteer on our team. I help head up the professional development work group within the Health Equity Coalition. So there's lots of opportunities to get involved within CPHA and within the Health Equity Coalition. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker for today while we start to get our slides going. So we are joined by Stephanie Salazar-Rodriguez, who is a second-generation native of Denver from a mixed Latino and Native American familial background, and she's also bilingual. She possesses over 25 years of experience working in high needs and under-resourced communities to address social and economic barriers to health, education, and health inequities. So she's got a lot of good work going on. Stephanie possesses a master's in public health from CU Anschutz and a master's of nonprofit management from Regis University. She is currently the director of community engagement and the regional health connector at the Mile High Health Alliance. So we are just so pleased to have Stephanie here speak with us today. She has our time until 1 p.m. So without further ado, Stephanie, feel free to join us and get going.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. And thank all of you who took time from your busy schedules to join us today. Stephanie Salazar-Rodriguez, and I'd like to thank the hosts for putting this together today and for the Health Equity Committee and the work that they've been doing. I'm honored to be presenting this month during Hispanic Heritage Month. Today, I'm going to be speaking from the heart, and the views that I represent here are my own personal views and not necessarily that of my employer. This presentation will share information that may be controversial and possibly stir some emotions. Please allow a safe space for yourself to open your minds and open your heart. Although this presentation talks about immigration, it is more about human rights and what this country has done for centuries to individuals who they have deemed to be immigrants. While I was preparing this presentation on more than one occasion, I was brought to tears. Tears of anger, tears of frustration, tears of sadness. And I cannot guarantee you that I'll be able to conclude this presentation without tears today. But I invite you to ask questions, to share your questions or comments in the chat that will be monitored. And then we will have a formal Q&A at the end. I also want to say that I have 3 little doggies. And so I am hoping that they behave themselves. But you know, this is the new world that we live in called virtual. So with that, I want to start. Today, my presentation is called Generaciónes Perdidas, 21st Century Shackles. And that means lost generations. And I'm talking about children in cages. Next. The outcomes for today are as follows. Talk about the long history the US has had on anti-immigration policies. However, the current administration has implemented some of the most inhumane policies in our lifetimes. Many of the individuals in custody today have fled war-torn countries from abject poverty and drug lords who have threatened the lives of their families and their children. Recently, Colorado Public Health and Environment has deemed systemic racism as a public health crisis. This crisis has impacted communities of color at a disproportionate rate, including the mortality rates related to the COVID epidemic, and individuals who have been denied basic health care as they are in cages in ICE facilities. We're also going to discuss how we can change the narrative. And most importantly, I recently saw Keith Urban, who is a country music singer from Australia. He has a new song that's called Say Something. And this quote just really, really resonated with me. It's, when the silence becomes so dangerous, say something, say something. Next slide, please. For me, this presentation is very, very personal. My family, my indigenous roots can be traced back to the Anasazi from the Four Corners in the Southwest United States over 600 years ago. And as you can see from this map, at one time, the entire United States was home to the First Nations people or the Native Americans. Consequently, when people tell me to go back to Mexico, I say, this is my homeland, which is the same for many Latinos in the United States, especially in the Southwest. We have 21 pueblos, Navajo Nation in New Mexico, and many, many of the Latinos in Colorado, their roots come from New Mexico as well. So even though we are, and people frequently forget that fact, and they treat us like we are rapists and murderers and undesirables. Remember, the border crossed us, and we did not cross the border. With that, I want to show the first video. Six.
What you're listening to are the sounds that have been missing from the policy debate.
We were testing that one earlier, but that one is for number 6 slide. But that's going to give you a preface on what we'll be doing, what we'll be seeing pretty soon.
Stephanie, on your slides, I don't have a video on this link.
Okay.
Which video did you want me to start off with?
This one, well, I have it here. I don't know.
Voices of children,
No,
denied legal representation.
no. Hold on, let's see if I can get it.
I have soaps and beds, and then ICE whistleblower.
No. I don't know, maybe you didn't get it on. Okay.
And that CNN link doesn't have a video, which
Research.
Yeah, we're probably gonna have to
Lives
have the
reviews. Undiscovered gems.
The ad.
Uncovering the best. CNN_.
Oh,
See all
you
our
can't
reviews
see-
and
oh, you can't see
recommendations
mine,
at
right?
underscore.com.
we cannot. If you're able to chat the link, I'd be happy to open it. Thanks for bearing with us, everybody. We'll get this going here in just a sec. Stephanie, is it a video in that CNN article? Is that where you're hoping to play?
Chris, I think we'll go ahead and move on.
Okay.
I'm not sure what happened.
All right. Thank you. Oh,
I'm trying to get out and back to where I was.
Your screen, if you're trying to get back to the Zoom screen, at the bottom of your computer screen, there should
You move
be,
to the next slide. Can we go back to the side before? Okay. This video is a video of a 91-year-old man in California who was physically abused, beaten with a brick by someone who was shouting at him to go back to Mexico. And so I just wanted to illustrate kind of one of the things that people are experiencing in this country, even though they're not necessarily immigrants to this country, but they are being treated like they, well, I mean, being physically abused in this instance. Now that has kind of thrown me off, so let's go back. Okay. All right, so next slide. So this one says leaders, is that correct? Okay, perfect.
yep.
All right. My parents in their youth were migrant farm workers. They were denied a formal education because they toiled in the fields from sunup to sundown to help support their families. They were human needs like toileting facilities. There was no such thing as childcare and inadequate pay. They were also exposed to deadly chemicals that were sprayed overhead while they were working. As a result of their humble beginnings, they marched with Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, who were the founders of the United Farm Workers, to fight for social justice for farm workers. They took us to march with Cesar Chavez when I was a very young child. This experience has etched an indelible mark on my soul, which has been the catalyst for my lifetime commitment to social justice and equity. In my teens, I started my work on various campaigns to elect Latino leaders who represented us and promoted our interests. We worked on campaigns of Ruben Valdez, Richard Castro, and other Latino leaders who paved the way for today's legislators. Ruben Valdez was the first Latino ever to be elected as the Speaker of the House in the legislature. Next. The children that are detained in the ICE facilities today are subjected to many childhood traumas that have lifelong implications. Since many of these children will never be reunited with their families, these traumas may impact them for the remainder of their life in this country for generations to come. They're experiencing things like abandonment, neglect, psychological abuse, physical abuse, and sexual abuse. Next slide. We started to hear the video a little earlier, but this is the voices of the children. This is one of the videos that really brought me to tears. As you can see in the background, these are the photo are the conditions that they're living in. But the one thing that is lacking about this whole ordeal, especially in the halls of Congress, is hearing the voices of the most vulnerable who are being impacted by these draconian immigration policies of the current administration. This video will shed some light on what is going on in the detention facilities.
What you're listening to are the sounds that have been missing from the policy debate around immigration, from the ones with the most at stake, children who've been forcibly separated from their parents.
Okay, no.
Are we having audio issues? Can I just confirm, Stephanie? Are you able to hear?
Yes, now I can.
What you're listening to are the sounds that have been missing from the policy debate around immigration, from the ones with the most at stake, children who've been forcibly separated from their parents.
It's a recording that was made from inside of a Border Patrol facility of children who have been separated recently from their parents after having crossed the border without documents into the United States.
That's Ginger Thompson, the ProPublica reporter who obtained this secretly recorded clip from a Texas civil rights attorney.
Bueno, aquí tenemos una orquesta.
They were between the ages of 4 and 10. All of the children on this recording are from Central American countries.
¿De dónde son ustedes? ¿Y tú?
Guatemala.
No llores. Vas a llegar con... Mira, ella te va a explicar y te va a ayudar. ¿Cierto?
There's a 6-year-old Salvadoran girl on the clip. Her name is Alison Jimena Valencia Madrid. She was just finishing kindergarten back in El Salvador. Her mother decided to flee gang violence. She has family in the United States. In this tape, she is distraught and asks authorities to let her make a phone call. And she wants to call her aunt.
Ah, pues ahorita ya te ayuda para que hables. Ya déjate de hablar.
No, papá.
Voy por aquí, niña.
No, papá. Tengo el número yo de memoria 34.
There There are around 2,300 kids who have been separated from their parents since what's known as the zero tolerance policy was started by the administration in April.
The zero tolerance policy calls for all people who illegally cross the border, even if they're crossing for the first time, to be criminally prosecuted, and that their children, or any children that they brought with them, will be separated during that time. They're being held initially in these Border Patrol facilities, but then they move into facilities that are controlled by Health and Human Services.
The United States will not be a migrant camp.
We do not have the luxury of pretending that all individuals coming to this country as a family unit are in fact a family. This administration has a simple message. If you cross the border illegally, we will prosecute you.
The backlash to this policy has been swift and sharp. People with very diverse political views on every other thing seem to have come together to condemn this policy.
I don't think we should obey a law that goes against what God intends, that you would take a baby, a child.
It's terrible to see families ripped apart, and I don't support that one bit.
We do have to find the middle ground of somehow, honoring the law of the land, but showing mercy to the immigrants.
The administration has sort of been struggling to respond.
I would cite you to the Apostle Paul and his clear and wise command in Romans 13 to obey the laws of the government.
It is very biblical to enforce the law. That is actually repeated a number of times throughout the Bible.
Have you heard the audio clip of these children wailing that just came out today?
I have not seen something that came out today, but I have been to detention centers. And again, I would reference you to our standards.
The image of this country that you want out there, children?
The image that I want of this country is an immigration system that secures our borders and upholds our humanitarian ideals. Congress needs to fix it.
We're not the ones responsible for creating this problem. We've inherited it, but we're actually the first administration stepping up and trying to fix it.
The Trump administration blames the previous administration for this policy, but the Obama administration did conduct a record number of deportations, but that administration did not prosecute people criminally for crossing the border for the first time, nor did it separate children from their parents at the time of the crossing.
Facing the backlash, the administration opened up tightly controlled tours of the facilities. This is handout footage from the government. Cameras are tightly restricted for journalists, and the children being detained are not allowed to speak to them.
They can be sort of sanitized, very sterile experiences that show you what the shelter looks like, but when it comes to children, gives you very little sense of what impact being there has on them.
For now, this clip is the closest we've gotten to hearing from the children.
The Salvadoran girl who asked for the phone call with her aunt actually got that phone call. I dialed that number as well and was able to speak to the aunt. You know, the aunt was devastated by this phone call and said to me, you know, can you imagine getting a phone call from your 6-year-old niece who is screaming into the phone and saying, you know, please, Auntie, please, I'll behave myself. Just come get me out of here because I'm alone.
You can stop it now, Chris. Next slide, please. There's a long history of separating children from their families in an effort to assimilate them. And in this instance, they actually said, kill the Indian out of them. These were boarding schools that the Native American children endured, and they took the children away from their families. This practice has led to countless Native American children who were never reunited with their families. The facilities, the detention facilities today who are housing these children is very similar to the boarding schools, and many of these children have been considered lost. The government hasn't even, with some children, doesn't even know where some of the children are. They don't even know the exact number of children, but they're lost in the system and they will never know their birth families. Next slide. As many of you, especially those who work in public health or in mental health, you know about the adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs. In early childhood trauma, children who are impacted by these can be plagued for their entire lifetimes. In many instances, the childhood traumas may lead to significant adult chronic physical and behavioral health issues, such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, substance misuse, and mental health illnesses, which ultimately may lead to lower life expectancy. Recently, an article in the Denver Post stated that, quote, Colorado is one of just 6 states where Latinos are more likely to die prematurely than their white counterparts due to treatable conditions. Much of this can be attributed to the lack of medical insurance and therefore the lack of access to medical care. So as you can see, we're talking about some of the items that also impact that: racism, food insecurity, trauma. And this is just one example of the childhood traumas that these children in cages are facing today. The children who are held in these detention facilities have no rights to legal representation in immigration courts. This video is a reenactment, but it is the reality of what the children as young as 3 years old are required to represent themselves in immigration courts. In Florida, a nonprofit group are teaching children about what to expect in immigration court. They provide coloring books and mock immigration court proceedings where children have the opportunity to play each of the roles in the court. So when they actually go into the court by themselves, they have some idea of what to expect. Show the next video, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Immigration Judge William Snoffer, sitting in the Immigration Court in Portland, Oregon. These are removal proceedings. Do you understand what these proceedings here in court are all about? You know what a lawyer is? No? Do you have a lawyer? No? The respondent is present in court, but without an attorney. Sophia, good morning. Are you a little nervous this morning? See? You know what a lawyer is? No? Do you have a lawyer?
Let that sink in just for a minute. Next slide, please. Many people who have toured the ICE facilities have reported that children are not at times are only given a single mylar blanket and are forced to sleep on hard and cold concrete floors. They have also reported that children have been denied showers for up to 12 days. They lack clean or dry clothing and basic hygiene items such as soap, toothbrushes, and toothpaste.
It's within everybody's common understanding that, you know, if you don't have a toothbrush, if you don't have soap, if you don't have a blanket, it's not safe and sanitary. Well, wouldn't everybody agree to that? Do you agree to that?
Well, I think there's fair reason to find that those things may be part of safety.
No, maybe are a part. What do you say maybe? But you mean there are circumstances when a person doesn't need to have a toothbrush, toothpaste, and soap for days?
In CBP custody, it's frequently intended to be much shorter term. So it may be that for a shorter term stay in CBP custody that some of those things may not be required.
It wasn't as though those people were there for 12 hours and then moved on to the Hilton Hotel. No, they were there for a fairly sustained period. And at least according to the evidence that the judge believed, they weren't getting these things for a fairly sustained period.
We weren't doing hot sauces. Okay. It has been reported that on countless occasions, children and adolescents have reported being sexually abused while in ICE custody. Nevertheless, ICE claims that they have no responsibility for the actions of their staff or the staff in the contracted facilities. Personally, I think this is deplorable. Next slide, please. Within the last few weeks, we have heard on the news that ICE is approving unauthorized sterilization of women in their custody. There's been a long history of forced sterilization of Black, Brown, and Native American women. In the past week, the Mexican government has sent a diplomatic request to the United States asking for clarifications on these practices and called these procedures unacceptable. Next video, please.
Yesterday, we learned about a whistleblower, a nurse, working at a Georgia Immigrations and Customs Enforcement ICE facility, leveling, honestly, ghastly allegations, chief among them, that women in that facility, migrant women, say that a doctor was performing unauthorized hysterectomies on immigrant women detained at that facility, which again is privately run. Now, you might have seen this story zipping around social media, understandably, and the allegations come from a formal complaint that was actually filed with the watchdog at the Department of Homeland Security. And the whistleblower is on the record, is named. Her name is Dawn Wooten. She was employed by that detention center. And along with those unauthorized hysterectomies, the complaint also alleges the facility lacked protection against coronavirus for detained immigrants, and that detainees suffer from a general lack of medical care. We've been chasing this story all day along with some of my colleagues here at NBC. Tonight, we can report a lawyer named Benjamin Osorio, representing women at that very facility, told NBC News that indeed 2 of his clients received hysterectomies they believe may have been unnecessary. And tonight, we here on All In spoke with another attorney who represents 2 different women who claim they also had unnecessary hysterectomies while detained at this facility. That lawyer tells us that as many as 15 immigrant women were given full or partial hysterectomies or other procedures for which no medical indication existed. Now, we reached out to ICE with these accusations. They sent us a long statement disputing these allegations and the implication that detainees are used for experimental medical procedures. They do say an independent office will investigate these claims. ICE also says that since 2018, only 2 individuals at the facility were referred to certified credentialed medical professionals for hysterectomies. Of course, the referred is the question here. I should also tell you, NBC has also reached out to the private company that runs this facility. While they are not commenting on the specific allegations, they say they have a strict zero tolerance policy for any kind of inappropriate behavior at the facilities, and they refute any allegations of misconduct. But the nurse behind that whistle.
The government has provided many different numbers on the children who have been separated. Earlier in one of the slides, we saw a different number, and no one actually knows the true number. However, the most recent number that they have given is close to 33,000 children who have been separated from their parents. Also, it shows that recently 500 parents have been deported without their children, and they have no inclination on where their children are. Even if each of these parents had 2 children, we would know that minimally 1,000 children will be forever separated from their families. My grandfather and his family came to the United States in the early 1930s when the government was looking for work for the railroad. When the government was done with them, they deported them back to Mexico. Because my grandfather married my grandmother in Mexico, they allowed him to stay in the country, but they lost track of their family and they were never reunited. My father went back to Mexico many times looking for his family and never found them. And we figured that maybe what happened was they just dumped them at the border and they never made it back to where they were originally from. Next slide, please. I love this slide, and I actually stole it from Jason Vitello. Changing the narrative. We have the power to change the story. We have the opportunity to help change the narrative, working toward liberation. As you can see, equity and equality are not enough to remove the barriers that will allow us to all be in the same playing field. Now more than ever, we can change the story going forward. Next slide, please. As we talked earlier about systemic racism and inequality, this is nothing new in the country. The Black Lives Matter movement has brought many of these inequities to life. We can utilize this moment to shed light into the reality that other groups are also experiencing these same issues. Latinos and Native Americans also have a very high number of individuals experiencing police violence. My family has a history of over 80 years of experiencing police violence. My father, my brothers, my nephews, my cousins, and even myself. When my father was about 8 years old, he and his cousins put horseshoe taps on the bottom of their huarache sandals, and they walked through downtown Denver just to hear the noise of their tap sandals. On more than one occasion, he and his cousins were detained by police. The police would sit them down on the curb, take off their huaraches, and beat them over the head until they drew blood. Remember, these were young boys between the age of 7 and 10 years old. Next slide, please. What can we do? How can we help? First and foremost, we can't be silent anymore. As we saw Mary Trump put in her book, one of the things that brought her to write this book was the torture of the immigrant children that caused her to speak out. Write or call your congressperson. Sponsor a family or a child. Donate to the legal entities representing the detainees, and join the movement. Next slide, please.
This November, the question isn't what is on the line, it's who. It's time for a president with a plan.
They marched through downtown with posters, chanting. Their message loud and clear. And by the time they reached the Southwest Key facility currently housing immigrant children, their voices grew louder.
There are still children incarcerated to this day. There's been reports of violence and COVID cases inside each location.
Emotions also grew heavier, bringing some to tears.
There's no reason for them to be put in that situation.
At least 100 from the Houston community joining Muslim civil rights organization CARE, along with immigrant rights organization familial, in a fight for what they say is to release immigrant children being held at facilities.
These kids should not be separated from their families and from their parents, especially during times like these of crisis.
Organizers encouraging community members to take action by contacting their local and state representatives to demand that detainees are released immediately.
Black, brown, and white, for justice for the people. We want justice. This is not Germany.
I'm hoping that our leadership in city, state, and national level can get together and agree with us, with the people, and say that these kids need to be sent with their parents.
We reached out to Southwest Key for comment on today's protests and demands. They did not get back to us. I'm Sven.
That brings us to talking about this. I've seen some comments in the chat, and I would love to hear some of your opinions. I would love to hear how you think we may be able to collectively do something to help these children. Please feel free to unmute yourself or feel free to chat in the chat. Remember when I started, we talked about silence.
Yeah, I'm sorry, is this the discussion time? We can.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So what do you think we should do to change, to move, to this situation?
One of the most important things that we can do is talk to our legislators and let them know how we feel about constituents. And with that comes voting. And so, you know, we know this has gone on for a long time, but this has been some of the most draconian immigration policies that we've had, at least in my lifetime. And I'm probably a lot older than most of you on this call today. But, you know, you have the ACLU, you have the Southern Law Poverty Project, you have multiple groups that are also representing these children, and they never have enough money to go into court against the U.S. immigration and custom legal representation that they have. So you can donate to them. There are times where I see that there are demonstrations at the local ICE facilities here in Aurora. So, you know, just speaking up, having our voices, talk to each other, to our friends, to our colleagues, don't have this dialogue be on an ongoing basis, not something that is one time that we heard today, but just so we know that, you know, we bring it to the forefront and it's not something that's hidden or not talked about, or talked about one day and then it's gone the next day, because these children are living in these cages in these deplorable conditions. And it's not something that I want to be proud of as a US citizen.
Yeah, I agree with all your suggestions, but also I'm curious, like, you know, there is so many of our key millionaires in United States that are involved in so many humanitarian, and how we could move them, like the Gates family, Benzo from Amazon as an example, to participate, to involve them for real change, for significant differences to occur. So how is possible, what can we do to go to a level where more depthness and more action with more structure could happen?
Yep. You know, that is an excellent question. And when you said the Bill Gates, I was like, wow, they're doing so many humanitarian things in other countries, but why not here? You're right. And I honestly don't have an answer for that. But I think in the people that I work with, that will be something that I bring to the table. So thank you so much for sharing that today.
You are welcome. I really hope something will come up from that, because I think that's one way to really move things faster.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. We need the private sector involved too. I mean, absolutely. We can't do it by ourselves. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Mary Volanek, and I wonder, what was it that I was wondering? I was wondering, first of all, is there a way for civilians to get into ICE facilities? Is there no volunteering, no?
Not to my knowledge. They really want to keep people out. There have been some women that are working at the Texas border, and they have faced even being threatened with being jailed because they want to do that. I think one of the greatest things is they do not want the public in general to know what is going on in these facilities.
Of course not, because it is deplorable. And then also, is there a list of current Congress people who are running for re-election who support ICE or who do not support, who support breaking down these systems of cages versus continuing?
You know, I don't know, but I have a colleague that's been doing some of that work, and I certainly can find out, and then we can send out a link to any of that information.
There's just so many messages out there. It's hard to decipher these issues one by one. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else? We have a few more minutes, and we have lots of people on. I would love to hear from a few more. 59 people.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
This is Cristina Colmenero. I'm also Mexicana, and so I really loved your presentation. Thank you very much. You know, I think that me personally, I think that it's not just the United States that we have the issue. I also think that, unfortunately, our borders, our Mexican government, our Venezuela, you know, I mean, everywhere around the world, unfortunately, I think that their governments are not providing for our people.
Absolutely.
And that is primarily the reason why a lot of people come to the United States for a better life, because it's the promised land. And I was on the other side. I was an immigrant, and thankfully, you know, I was able to become a U.S. citizen through my mom, you know, and I think that's, unfortunately, I don't think it's a quick fix. And I think that it needs to be, you know, we need to speak out more. But I also think that the governments, unfortunately, also have to see for our people and make better jobs. And that way, I mean, all the people that I know that are here, that are Mexicanos, they wish they weren't here, because this is the life where all you do is work, come home and sleep. Work, come home and sleep. And in Mexico, it's not that way. I mean, you could be there a day or two, and unfortunately, you know, I mean, you feel like you've been there for a whole week. Why? Because it's different. So unfortunately, you know, a lot of those people cannot live this way, and that's why they come to the United States. I think it does have to happen on both sides.
Absolutely. I mean, people have talked about that, and it's like, if we were to be able to even send some foreign aid to Mexico, who is our closest neighbor to the south, maybe that would not have to happen. But unfortunately, at this time, I mean, it's hard for us to even make inroads in our own government, let alone to the governments of the other countries. But I hear you exactly what you're saying, and I totally agree.
Well, and unfortunately, that because of the you know, all the violence and the drug lords, and that we do have in all these other countries, I mean, including my Mexico, unfortunately, the government is involved. And so that is all, you know, so disgusting. And unfortunately, you know, there's not there's just a lot of change that needs to be done.
Yes, absolutely.
I would like to share. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to bring up my very last slide, and I'm going to just leave it there while we still take a few more comments.
Yeah, so my name's Stephanie Peña Figueroa. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I really appreciated this presentation. So I was born in Guatemala, and going off from what Christina was sharing, my family and I decided to make Colorado our permanent safe home due to the gang members, drug dealers. There was a quote that we had to pay every month, and if we couldn't afford to pay them, there would be consequences. And so already my experience in Guatemala, and then that experience in my journey coming to the United States and crossing the border, was already a traumatizing experience for me. And so I can only imagine what these children have to face. Some are traveling from Central America, South America, Mexico, and some of the experiences that I had, I witnessed some of the so-called coyotes, or the smugglers, sexually abuse teenagers in front of everyone. And we had to run, we had to try to escape from ICE agents. And so I cannot imagine the trauma that children who are being separated in the border have to go through. And so those experiences for me, and also like what I experienced in Guatemala, is the reason why I wanted to go into a field in healthcare. And, it's important to know these stories, because not everybody is hearing what children have to go through, or, and also the consequences, the mental health that these children will have to face in the future. So what can we do in order to help provide mental health resources to children who are probably experiencing these things? Because I, as an adult, it's really hard to access mental health services, and sometimes there are options available, but we don't know about them, or they're expensive. So just wanted to share.
Yes, and also I think one of the most important things is having trauma-informed care. Providers that are trained in trauma-informed care. It's so important to have that. And I will tell you that, there are many options for people now with our Medicaid expansion, and also through Connect for Health Colorado, to be able to get health insurance. And I mean, of course, unfortunately, it's only applicable to people who are here documented. And there are some clinics like the Sheridan Clinic that is part of the UC School of Nursing. They have mental health counseling there, and it is on a sliding fee scale, and people do not have to be documented or have insurance. So there are resources out there, but sometimes I think we just need to know them. Chris, can you put my last final slide up, please? I always like to end with this. This is Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And with that, we have a few more minutes if anyone else wants to say anything. Otherwise, we can conclude. I see Nancy put on that residents of Aurora can go to the Dawn Clinic without insurance. There's another clinic, La Cocina, provides free mental health services for undocumented. And so there really are some resources out there. Anyone else?
Stephanie, this is Jamie D'Amico. I'm a public health.
You're cutting out, Jamie. We lost your audio, my dear.
Okay, I'm going to try it one more time very quickly. So a lot of, this was an incredible presentation, and I certainly cried through the whole thing. And it has really fallen off the media radar, I think, because of all the crap that's going on in our country. So would it be possible you know, to have those lists of resources somewhere, or maybe as a follow-up. You know, I live in central Colorado and you know, deported to home office from Denver for 7 months, but really would like to get more involved. And I'm not sure what the resources are. Certainly I can write to legislators, which I do a lot, but I would like to start readdressing this area. And I'd love some resources. I've also like some of the history, you know, United States invaded took Mexico, took our, you know, your country away. You know, that's where we have Texas and Arizona. I'd be really interested in having some good historical resources, because having that context would be very helpful in speaking to legislators and people who are totally unaware or uncaring.
Well, I will tell you that the Center for Health Progress has a group that's called the Coalition on Immigrant Rights, and they meet like every second Monday. And it's statewide coalition, and they're doing some amazing work, and also with CIRC. So those are two great. Let me put my email in here, and if any of you are interested in that information, I have some lists of resources and also groups that are working on this.
Great.
Okay, I'm checking for typos. Okay, here we go. There's my email.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. We had one question that came up in the chat, if you're interested in answering it while we still have a few more minutes.
Sure.
So there's a question that came up. I have to scroll up a little bit. Maria said, "Thank you so much for this presentation. I know that this touches me personally in so many ways. I have to say that does not start with say something. Let's not stay quiet yet. Let's reach out to our representatives in our government and our legislative. These kids and families deserve a better life." Here's the question. What does the USA say about us, that they are reaching out to us and this is the way USA treats them? How shameful. I guess maybe that was rhetorical.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. And this is how we have been treated. And so it's, you know, again, like I said earlier, it's been a long, long history of the United States policies, and it's just gotten worse. And I, like I said, it brings me to tears. It's beyond my comprehension how we allow that to happen in this country.
Hi, Stephanie. This is Maria. Thank you, Sarah, for reading my quote as well. I am touched deeply. I, as well, have gone through similar things with, you know, some of the comments on there, and also with you. My grandfather also marched with Caesar, and, you know, again, our families are migrant. They work, and I guess the question, like I said, yes, it does touch me, and when anybody is reaching out to the US, Cubans, you know, Salvador, Argentinos, anything like that, when they are reaching out to USA, and USA is, this is how we treat them. It's like, how does that leave USA standing? It doesn't. You know, what happens to, oh yeah, you know, come to the norte, you know, you come and work. And it's like Christina was saying, you come here to eat, sleep, and work. That's pretty much all you do. You know, there's no time for families. And again, when you think of all these children being caged up, it's like, and we can't do anything, we can't say, but yes, let's reach out. Let's reach out to our legislatives, our representatives, you know, our governments. It's like, we need to put a stop to this, because it's not okay. It's like, yes, families disappear, children's disappear. I just have so much to say, and yet, but at the same time, it's like, yes, I work with children. You know, yes, I'm very fortunate that also because of my grandparents, you know, I was able to go ahead and become a US citizen as well. But it's a fight, but it's well worth it. But it just shames that United States, this is the way we treat people. It's like, they come here to seek a better life, and that's not what they're getting. You know, you you talk about women being caged up and the same thing, and look at all the stuff that's going on to them, women disappearing in Juarez, everything. There's so much. I know it's just a nonstop. And so just my thought is, thank you so much for sharing this. You know, maybe most of us already do know a lot about this, but it definitely, you know, brings us to reality again. It's like, let's make a change. Let's do what we can, make it happen. Thank you again so much.
Like Cesar Chavez said, sí se puede.
Exactly.
Yeah, and he's Patricia, and I will add, like, I am a researcher professor, and you know, this is happening at also at more of a higher level. Many of my international trainees, those are like postdoctoral fellows, very highly qualified, early career scientists, and they don't want to come to US. They are looking for other places, and so we will be hurt by our ignorance and by our culture that we are the best, that we believe we are so good that we don't have to learn from our errors, from learning from other cultures, and we don't invest in education, in building character early in school. And so this is going to have a great ripple effect. And I'm sure we always like to blame somebody else, and it's going to be China and so forth, but it is really because we are not doing what we should be doing to really be a great nation. We are losing a lot of our priorities and principles. And it is very unfortunate.
Someone is asking about the resources from the chat, if they can be sent out because they can't copy and paste them. I think we can do that. And with that, we are 2 minutes past our time. And I thank you, every one of you, for participating, for showing up today. And please help get out the message of what is happening in this country. Thank you so much. And thank you to our host today.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and everyone else for speaking from your heart. We'll have more webinars coming up, but if you get the chance to complete the webinar survey, we'll try to get some resources out to you. I'll put the link again in the chat and try to get the chat resources to everyone as well. Thank you again, Stephanie.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.